Well, without repeating everything that has gone before me, I agree with Bill. The electronic system works quite well. We had, I think I'm up to 30 rats that I have nailed with my electronic chap under my house, and my wife will not allow me even to think about bringing anything in that's poison. We went to see The Cat That Changed the Nation, or whatever, with Sousa and others, and showed what is happening to the wildlife as a result of those, the rodenticide. Actually, I take one of them. I'm an AFib patient. It's a blood thinner. Unfortunately, if you take too much of it, that's the end of you. So I am supportive of that sort of thing, but there is one exception that I've heard, that when you've got an earth-filled dam, that could be what I guess Ryan would accept as a sufficiently high level of public good, that we have to figure out what else can be used. According to Watershed Protection, last time I talked with them, they didn't have a substitute, but we should be looking for it.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. The next question from the audience for each of you is, do you feel that business and housing are at odds with environmental protection? What is the right balance? And Mr. Johnston, would you start us off with your answer?
Is that it? Okay. Is housing and business at odds with the environment? It can be. It just depends on whether or not we have some balance to what we're doing. Clearly, the housing inventory is not keeping pace with rents because we have an undersupply and an overdemand, but I don't see us solving that. The businesses, they have their difficulty of not having local people to work in their businesses, but I think that there is a way that can be balanced. I think the Ojai Valley does a better job at it than most places.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Mr. Laura?
Is business and housing at odds with the environment? I think that we could definitely address our economic status and our housing shortage, and also be environmentally friendly and considerate. I say that because we have an opportunity to really think about high-paying jobs outside of the tourist sector, and then also the ability to potentially build homes that do not use water or sink water back into it, implement gray water systems, add curb cut near your planters, etc. So there's a way of keeping up with our economic status, getting more high-paid jobs, and addressing our housing shortage while protecting our water, protecting our air, and then most importantly, protecting our soil.
Thank you, Mr. Laura. Mr. Haney?
So I see this question going back to how our city council creates policy, and how we looking at making choices regarding environmental aspects of our housing as well as from our businesses. So for instance, we've already started through our planning, looking at landscaping, looking at stormwater capture, looking at gray water. We have already initiated a better way for the community to interact with the environment. So we're not behind this ball, we're in front of this ball. I just want to make that clear so we all understand where we are. But it all is created by the policies that the council actually writes and discusses with their community and then puts in place.
Thank you, Mr. Haney. Mr. Wyrick?
You know, there's no getting around the fact that human settlement is not exactly great for environmental quality. But we are part of the environment as human beings, and we have not recognized that very well traditionally, particularly in post-World War II America. So when we need to think about ourselves more in terms of designing our habitation to be more consistent with environmental quality. It's going to have a negative impact in some way or other, but we can mitigate it. When we deal with hardscapes, we have to maybe think about re-engineering our entire town We have all kinds of stream flows across this town that could be sinking into the aquifer, and we've channelized them. We were interested in flood control. Let's get rid of that water. We are changing that. We're changing it as fast as we can. You know, if we're thinking about all these kinds of issues, we need to think about you know, how we design our habitation to be more consistent and advance or be less deleterious to environmental quality. But there's no way that we can really sit here and say it's not going to have any effect at all.
Thank you, Mr. Warwick. Mr. Blatz?
Well, you know, there's no denying the fact that the history of man, the history of our country, the history of our state, the history of our county and our city have always had some inherent conflict between business and housing and the environment. That's kind of always going to be there. But as we get to a more progressive approach and we have better thinking and we utilize technology and we innovate new ways to think about not only how we design our communities, but how we design everything in our environment that lives around us, we can bring that balance back. Ojai does not have to be perfect between its housing, business, and environment, but we are in a much better position than a lot of other communities are. And there's nothing wrong with us being a leader and a symbol of what can be done and when you do all of those things correctly. And it may not fit for everyone else. But is there an inherent conflict in those? Yeah, at times, unfortunately, there kind of always is. But we don't have to accept that as being something that's going to happen here. And Ojai's done a pretty good job of trying to balance that through its history and be an example of a community that can do all of those without sacrificing the environment completely.
Thank you, Mr. Blatz. And wouldn't you know it, there's some questions from the audience related to water. So I have 4 that I think I can rope all into one question, but because of that, I'm going to give you each 2 minutes to answer. A drought emergency has been declared by the city of Ojai. Would you support a moratorium on new building, including tiny houses? And are you in favor of alternative conservation measures such as gray water and water catchment initiatives? And what changes would you make in Ojai that would significantly conserve water? So we'll start with Mr. Johnston. If you need me to repeat all that, I'll be glad to do so.
Was the last part of that question, what have I done personally at home or to save water?
That's a good question.
Well, and I have a really good answer.
Yeah, right. What changes would you make, I think, as a member of the council and the mayor, make in our valley that would conserve significant amounts of water?
Well, the gray water thing is a possibility, but it's not the panacea that a lot of people think it would be. But we do that at our house. We just don't do it with plumbing. You know, we carry it. The question was, do I support
gray water and water catchment initiatives?
Okay, no, you just start at the top, and I'll try to stay with you.
No, a drought emergency has already been declared by the city. Would you support a moratorium on new building, including
Yes.
tiny houses?
Well, I don't know that tiny houses would need to be included in it, but I would support a moratorium on building, even if it's only symbolic, just to say to the community, we're not going to aggravate an already bad situation. We're asking them to sacrifice. We shouldn't be giving away whatever they're sacrificing. As far as tiny homes, if we do it as a demonstration project and we do it in a very limited way, it's quite possible that would be totally insignificant in terms of affecting the the water shortage. But I am in favor of adopting a moratorium. That doesn't mean getting rid of swimming pools. It means covering them over and use them as reservoirs. Anything else on the card?
Let's see. I think you may have covered all of. I think you may have covered all of these. Yes, you have.
What changes would I make?
Make in the valley that there was significantly conserve large amounts of water.
Well, water capture and water or interfering with stream water, is what we're being sued over right now. But the things that Bill talked about, we're already starting to do, and I would support spending money to continue doing that. We've got a consultant right now who is looking for a number of projects to do exactly that. Whether one of the things we do at our house, and they talked about the other night, is taking the condensation coming off of the HVAC systems. Your air conditioner. We get on an average day when we have moisture in the air, I think we get like 10 gallons of water comes off, we trap it and reuse it. The city could do the same thing. I'm getting the
Time out.